Good afternoon. How you doing, man? How you doing? I'm Bill Flores, native of Lafayette, and I was coming to this LAGCOE show at a young age. And first time my dad showed me drilling mud with a Baroid display out there with a mud tank with mud circulating around. And I'm so glad to be back part of LAGCOE again here in 2017, doing my volunteer work as a member of the VIP Transportation Committee, where we brought 80 of our distinguished guests from Houston over here to take advantage of the show and see new technology and meet people and see old friends. And I thank everybody for joining and coming today. I've got today's honor of introducing our guest speaker, Mr. Randall Luthi. He's the president of the National Ocean Industry Association based out of Washington, D.C., and they're the chief lobbyist for the industry. It's a real pleasure for me to introduce Randall because I've served a member of NOIA for the past 20 years, on very committees over there, and on the recently elected to the executive committee. And my pleasure with Randall, first time I met Randall, when he came to Lafayette for the very first time, 2007, when he was a director for the MMS to meet operators working in the Gulf of Mexico here in Lafayette. Now, we had a dinner, and it was really nice for Randall to take the time when he was appointed MMS director, I think by our former President George Bush. Excuse me. Randall is currently president of National Ocean Industry Association, NOIA. He was an attorney and rancher from Freedom, Wyoming, and he's got an impressive background in government, service, and private sector. Randall most recently served as director of Mineral Management Service from 2007 to July of 2009, January 2009, where he also oversaw offshore lease sales, collection, distribution of state and federal government mineral revenues and royalties. He also oversaw the expansion of the Renewable Energies Office at the MMS, which managed the development of wind, wave, and current energy in our U.S. oceans. Immediately before directing MMS, Randall served as Deputy Director for the Department of Fish and Wildlife Services. Randall also served as the attorney for both the Department of Interior and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOIA, where he worked at the natural resources damages following the Exxon Valdez incident. In 2000, Randall started the law firm of Luthi and Volleys, LLC, in Thane, Wyoming, which helped to pay for his working ranch, which consists of cow, calf operations, and growing hay and barley. Randall's career in Wyoming House of Representatives began in 1995, where he served as Speaker of the Wyoming House in 2005 and 2006. So thank you for Randall Luthi.
Good afternoon. All right, yep, we need to work on that just a little bit. How's dinner, how's lunch? I thought so as well, and I think LAGCOE has just done a fabulous job with this conference, and that's how I'd like to begin, is actually thanking all of you that invited me to get out of D.C. for a couple of days, be able to actually come to Lafayette, which is truly one of my favorite places to visit. This will be about the fourth visit. Never get to spend enough time here. Always appreciate it. It's a special pleasure to be in the Ragin' Cajun Dome. Not everyone can say they've been in the Ragin' Cajun Dome, right? I'm taking that back to D.C. for cocktail talk, so I'd appreciate that. And again, congratulations for a great event that I know you put on every year. I know attendance is down, but that's not surprisingly the way the market is right now and our industry as well. And finally, a couple of finallys. I'm not quite through yet. Privileged to be here and work with Don Briggs, the LAGCOE Louis. I think I've got that right. Yeah, I can read it on his hat. But LOGA and NOIA have been partners as long as I've been at NOIA. And it's been a great relationship as we work together to try and promote wise, sensible decision-making in Washington, D.C. We always have not been successful at doing that, but that is what we promote. The other thing I'd like to thank you for, and the directors of this conference, is having me come 24 hours after Scott Angel. Because he is a tough act to follow. He's a hometown boy, had his home court advantage, and I've been with him enough and around to know that he can literally suck the air out of about any room that he's in. So fortunately, 24 hours have gone by and all the oxygen and air has been restored to this room, and that most of you have hopefully forgotten what he had to say so that I can start with a fresh approach with you all. That's important, trust me. But I can tell you, and I'm a great fan of Scott's, I can tell you that no Bessie director, no MMS director, they've never had a director like Scott Angel. He really does bring a unique mix of knowledge and experience, political savvy, and just good old Cajun know-how. And that's going to serve him extremely well as he serves the offshore industry and also the people of the United States. And speaking of great Louisianans, I bring you a message.
Hi, this is Congressman Steve Scalise. I'm sorry I can't be with you at this year's LAGCOE conference. I'm actually in D.C. We're still voting this week. But first let me say thanks to all of you who've sent your prayers and your support for me and Jennifer and our family during this recovery. It's great to finally be back to work again. It was great to finally get back home to my district in Southeast Louisiana, but I know y'all are in Lafayette celebrating your conference, but also the reason I'm real excited is that my good friend Don Briggs is being recognized to get your annual Louis Award. And let me tell you, I fought side by side with Don on a lot of battles in Baton Rouge. There is no more tireless champion for the oil and gas industry than Don Briggs. So I appreciate that y'all are giving him the Louis Award. I hope you give him a hard time because he's a guy who he works hard. He needs to make sure he's playing and enjoying the good signs of life too. But he's a great friend, but somebody who we are all proud to work with to grow this great industry that you all represent. The oil and gas industry is so critical to our economy. I enjoy fighting for the oil and gas industry up here in Washington, D.C., but good to see that we've got great people like Don Briggs who lead the charge back home in Louisiana. Congratulations, Don. Hope to see you soon. Y'all take care.
By all means. Louisiana has some great representation, and Steve Scalise is certainly one of the best. I have to talk a little bit about NOIA and what it is. The National Ocean Industries Association has represented companies in the offshore energy industry for many, many years. Most of our members you know because you are our members. And I'm pleased to say many of you are here today. I'm afraid to start mentioning names, and as we roll through some of the names certainly on the particular slide, I did notice that one that is based out of here, PharmaSafe as well. But we're thrilled to have the companies that we do that are represented in NOIA. Now, a trade association is just a fancy DC word for lobbyist. And that's exactly what we do. We lobby, we educate. Each and every day, we try to educate policymakers, federal policymakers, state policymakers, members of Congress, and political leaders and the general public about the vital role that offshore energy has. And I think even more importantly, the vital role that offshore energy could and should have in the energy future of our world. NOIA is celebrating our 45th year, and during that time, our entire existence, we've only represented companies that work in the offshore world. And while our individual objectives may have changed, the goal has remained the same, and that is access, access, access. We not only promote access to open up new areas of the OCS for energy development, but we also promote keeping those areas that are currently open but are difficult to actually get out there because of federal regulations, because of federal nonsense, because of stuff that just prevents you from actually doing your job. We are there to try and fight for you as we do each and every day. Access is vital. Access is key to our survival. And access means more energy produced at home, which means more revenues for federal and state governments, and most importantly, more jobs. Now, this next slide just shows you the oil prices for the last few years. And unfortunately, I've had to use this slide much, and I'll even give you another, much longer than I had planned. In 2016, I was told by the oil prognosticators that, oh, you can safely say you're going to have to be lean and mean through 16. I've now had to go to lean and mean through 17. We might see some green in 18, but there will be plenty in 2020. Because most oil prognosticators are now saying there's going to be an oil supply shortage in 2020. However, I do point out that most of these forecasters also went to the same school as weather forecasters. So just be a little cautious about that, all right? You know, yesterday you've heard how cost-cutting and efficiency has greatly reduced the cost of drilling a deep water well, and wells everywhere, frankly, both on and offshore. Many of you here are service companies. Service companies make up a great bulk of the NOIA membership as well. And in order to cut costs, that means you have cut costs to make it work for the producers as well. And I know that many of you, just to have the job, has cut costs to the degree where you're probably not making anything, maybe nothing. This is not a sustainable situation. You can do it for a while. We can all do it for a while. But the reality is we need to have prices start to creep back up in the 70s. And I do hope this time the forecasters are right, that we have hit the bottom and that we're continuing to slowly come up. On a more positive side, this is what you have done. This is a graph of energy sufficiency for the United States and for us as consumers. Frankly, because of you, our ability to supply energy has increased, and logically, our dependence upon foreign oil has decreased. Last year and the year before, the U.S. supplied about 88% of its energy needs. Just in 2005, the U.S. was at an all-time low in meeting its energy needs. The last time the U.S. produced more energy than it consumed was back in the 1950s. There are a few of you with the right color of hair that might have a chance of remembering that. I, of course, do not, but I'm sure my mother told me about it as I was growing up. Also, in the last couple of years, it's important to realize that 3/4 of that energy for the United States came from fossil fuels, 11% from renewables, and about 10% from nuclear. So, why do we need more energy? Every prediction out there, this happens to come from the IEA, indicates that the world is going to need more energy. The distribution of global energy sources in 2040 predicts that fossil fuels will still make up about 77% of the energy mix. Non-traditional fuels, wind, biofuels, they're going to increase dramatically. But let's say it's 20%. It's still expected that even 17% or so will be that energy mix. So fossil fuels are still the mainstay of what the U.S. and the world is going to have to rely on. Who's going to need that energy? The consumption of petroleum and other liquid fuels is expected to grow by nearly 20 million barrels per day between 2015 and 2040. That means you should be reaching about 113 million barrels a day by the time it hits 2040. The transportation sector is going to continue to account for the majority of that use, and the non-OECD countries, that would be in those countries we normally refer to as developing countries, their demand in fuel is expected to grow by an astounding 39% in the next 15 or so years. And further, more than 80% of the total increase in oil and petroleum fuel consumption is going to come from Asia and China, India, as their population demands a higher standard of living and therefore more energy to reach it. Now, onshore and offshore resources, both traditional and non-traditional, should all be a part of that vital mix as the United States prepares to fuel the world. And please realize, as you do, Petroleum products are much more than just us going up to the tank and filling up our car. You create an infinite number of products that helps make the world cleaner, safer, and frankly, just an overall better place to live. They improve our standard of living in both the developing and the developed world. Fossil fuels provide the energy to heat and cool our homes, cook our food, run our businesses, fuel cars, trucks, trains, airplanes, ships. Modern gadgets like phones, computers, are all based upon petroleum products, as are life-saving medical devices, our clothing, eyeglasses, the carpets upon which we walk, the roads on which we drive, and the roofs over our heads. And this should be one of the tools and one of the messages that we should be telling people. This is frankly a message that is specifically designed for millennials. So let them know what kind of products oil does. So now that we have an understanding that we're going to need more energy and you're all set to develop it, now let's look at some of the federal policies that have occurred in the last few years. This is a map of the Atlantic Basin. The yellow line represents countries that have an offshore oil and gas leasing program and where it is open for development. Notice what is lacking: the entire east side of the United States. This also doesn't include areas in the Arctic where countries are looking as well above the Arctic Circle, countries like Canada, Russia, and Norway. Many groups that are opposed to fossil fuels will tell you that the Arctic cannot be developed safely. I tell them, oh my God, have you told Norway this? Because frankly, they've been doing it for 20 years. I believe they do believe the Arctic can be developed safely, as can the United States and Canada. And frankly, particularly in the Arctic, the U.S. is going to be left behind if these policies don't change and we look for more and more ways to provide energy. We talked about access. Currently in the United States, 94% of the outer continental shelf is closed to oil and natural gas exploration. This includes seismic work as well right now. So estimates that are based upon some limited information and just some flat-out wild-ass guesses means that we're not tapping into about 46 billion barrels of oil and 185 trillion cubic feet of gas. But of course, we have no idea if those numbers are accurate because, frankly, those who look for oil and natural gas, haven't had the opportunity to go out there and look. So we don't know what's actually there. Now, granted, low commodity prices may make the decision that these areas may not be looked at or opened. But frankly, that should be a market decision and a decision that you make, not a political decision. But speaking of political decisions, this is what has changed in D.C. There is clearly a I just wanted to make sure you understood there's a new attitude in D.C. Would you like me to play it again, just in case? We'll probably let it go. There really is a new attitude about energy, about the importance of energy, and the role that the United States should make. You know, there is kind of a lot of craziness and turmoil in D.C. I don't know if you've noticed that, right? Only on every news channel you turn to about every day. But what I can tell you is on the energy front, there are decisions that are being made that are well thought out, deliberate, and visionary. You know, just 10 years ago, when I was at MMS, we used to talk about our energy future in very cautionary terms. We would talk about our energy goals is that we want to have a reliable, reasonably priced source of energy. Well, that talk then went to, we can achieve energy security. And then we can certainly achieve North American energy security. Well, frankly, the Trump administration has just blown through all that. And now we are set up on a path for energy dominance. Energy dominance. And it is possible. It is possible if we have the right policies and decisions coming out of D.C. Decisions that will allow you to do what you do. And that is to look and develop energy resources for the U.S. consumers. We're not there, but we are on our way. That new look included an executive order signed in late April, basically signed by President Trump, that did away with a lot of the decisions that were made in the previous 8 years, actually rolled back a lot of regulations that affected the offshore and onshore world. The order appealed most of the drilling bans, and it instructed the United States to start on a new, what we call, 5-year program. Those of you in the offshore world know what a 5-year program is. That's how leases are set up in 5-year increments. The executive order also called for a new permitting process that would actually streamline development for seismic research as well as permitting of well drilling permits. That was an excellent start. Secretary Zinke then signed a couple of orders of his own, one of which was actually direct the Department of the Interior to do exactly what President Trump told him to do, and that was start the implementation of a new 5-year plan. It also signed saying that all areas were back on the table, that they should be considered. They also directed the National Marine Fisheries Service to streamline their permitting process so that seismic permits, which are so key in both onshore and offshore, were able to start getting through the process faster. And it also told BOM to try and, well, not try, it was directed to streamline its permitting processes as well, and to halt action on the air quality rule, and to also halt action on the financial assurances rule until industry had a place at the table and was able to discuss these things through. The second secretarial opinion or order created the Counselor to the Secretary for Energy Matters. And that's an entirely new position. Vince DeVito is who's filling that position, and he is only there to try and help energy be developed. He's quite interesting. Those of you that have come to D.C., I hope you get a chance to meet with him. Contact us if you're coming. We'll help set that up. We're glad to help if we can. Talk is good. But we actually started seeing some action out of the Department of the Interior as well. This is the official start of the new 5-year program that was issued in June. The easy part is done on a lot of this. The regulations have been stopped. The new 5-year process has begun. Now comes the hard part. And that is actually rewriting the regulations, rewriting them in a way that actually represents a partnership between the federal government and United States, or the federal government of the United States and the on and offshore industry as well. Scott Angel talked about that yesterday. So we're just at the beginning. As you look at, this is just the reason I put it on there is to let you know currently how many steps are necessary for many things. That top line is just to get an oil and gas leasing program going. Then you go, and once you do that, to plan for a specific lease sale, you go through all those steps. Then you go through all that plan approval for oil and gas. These are the areas that are being looked at and hopefully streamlined. We need to shorten the process. We don't need to shorten the quality or the review, but we need to shorten the process. In addition, they opened up the area for seismic surveys again. Again, seismic's important to the offshore industry. Without seismic, you're not going to do work. I think you're going to be able to see actually a shortened seismic process as has been promised. In addition, they opened up all regulations. The challenge was to us, industry. We were asked, what regulations are preventing you from doing your job effectively? And they've been asked us to actually report back to the Department of the Interior or the Coast Guard or EPA which of those regulations. For Interior, that portal is still open. So we have submitted comments. They're looking at it. But again, the easy part's over. It's now we need to have people that actually know how to write and will write those regulations. Let's talk a little bit about personnel. Personnel is policy. And who a president picks or a cabinet it certainly makes a huge difference. The Department of the Interior manages on and offshore oil and gas development. Unfortunately, those few appointments that have been made are excellent. Absolutely excellent. And here are a few of the faces that you may or may not recognize. Certainly Secretary Zinke, Deputy Secretary David Bernhardt, Kate McGregor, you may have worked with on the Hill, and of course, our own, I say our own, Scott Angel. Every president has the ability to appoint about 4,000 people in leadership positions in the government. About 1,200 of those positions have to be Senate confirmed. Right now, the Democrats are saying we are in no hurry to get these people in place. So they're taking up their full 20 or 30 hours to discuss each and every one of these appointments. That's one of the reasons it's taking so long. But frankly, the White House has also been painfully slow about naming people to positions. So certainly that time frame can't even start to tick until they actually name them. Progress is being made. But I think part of the slowness is that they're new, but they're also vetting the candidates very, very carefully. And frankly, if we continue to get the quality people at Interior that they have so far, I'm almost ready to say it's worth the wait, but we're getting to the point where it may not be worth the wait. For example, onshore, BLM needs a director. They need a director to move ahead. Another thing they started looking at were royalty rates. The last two sales, another sale was just announced yesterday. The shallow water will have a 12.5% royalty rate. That's a good start. Now, frankly, it probably won't make a lot of difference for this sale or the next sale, but I think in future sales, it will start making a difference. In addition, the Secretary of the Interior has reinstituted the Royalty Policy Committee. And frankly, he has told that committee to look at everything. And I think what you're going to see is actually proposals to lower the current royalty rate and to maybe tie it. You might see proposals to tie it with energy prices itself, with commodity prices. And they're hopefully a way to simplify how royalties are determined and how it's paid. I have the privilege of serving on this committee. I think I'm still looking forward to it, but we've been promised that we're going to have a lot of work to do. Congress, you hear Congress can't do anything. A lot of times that appears to be the case. But I tell you, they have made some great progress. In September, so just last month, the House passed the Make America Secure and Prosperous Appropriations Act, which basically what that does is help fund the Department of the Interior and some of the other agencies that we're concerned about. But it also included some language that the House believes that we should be promoting policy that increases energy. A part is all of the above energy policy. It allows for the continued development of the new 5-year plan. It also allows for more seismic testing in the Atlantic in particular. It also promises funding for states through Go Mesa. It also prevented an increase in inspection fees. And if those of you that are producers, that's a big thing right now in the cost of inspections. And it also prevented a fee increase to just get drilling permits. And then earlier this month, the Natural Resources Committee introduced I love these names, Accessing Strategy Resources Offshore Act, or ASTRO Act. I don't know if they had any connection with Houston or not. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that it's the ASTRO Act, right? But it's interesting. But again, it opens up the potential of revenue sharing of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars with other coastal states. We think that's important if states want to be a partner and part of opening new areas. It also has prevented the unilateral withdrawal of the creation of monuments in the ocean, which we think is important. We think you might want to create monuments. What it hasn't done, which we at NOIA are promoting, is we would like to see, instead of a 5-year program, we would like to see a 25-year program, where areas can be put on the table or off the table. but put them on for 25 or take them off for 25 years. Therefore, those in the industry have a long-term goal, way to plan long-term for 5 years, as opposed to this 5-year process, which gets changed, frankly, every time a new president takes over. I'm going to wind up by talking just a little bit about wind. And you might want to say, well, why do we care about wind? We at NOIA promote energy of all kinds, including wind. But wind in some aspect is going to be part of our future. This just gives you an idea of offshore wind potential. And you see it particularly along the Atlantic coast. In fact, they have some of the best winds, and Texas as well has very good winds. Louisiana, not so much, but the Gulf of Mexico comes in probably second to the Atlantic on just having consistent winds. 53% of the nation's population lives on the coast or near the coast, particularly in the Northeast, New York. The only way you get energy there, through their own fault, I will say, but the only way they get energy there is through pipelines. So wind may actually play a part in actually supplying them with energy as well. But once again, why is it important? The government has several lease sales for wind that has already been sold. There's going to be development along the Virginias, Carolinas, Maryland, Delaware. And why do we care? Because frankly, we have found that many in the service industry were actually hired. 2 companies were hired to develop the first offshore wind farm off the coast of Rhode Island. These were companies that have worked in the oil and gas field for years. So it's another potential source of revenue. It's another potential source that I don't think is going to conflict with oil and gas, not for a long, long time. In fact, I can envision the East Coast actually being an energy haven of both, if the right federal policies are there. So it is a possibility. Now, I am through. I've talked about the wind potential. I've talked a little bit about the politics. I've told you that it is a new attitude in D.C. But most of all, I want to start and finish by thanking you. Because of you, thousands like me were actually able to travel to a school of my choice several hundred miles from my home. Because of you, you have allowed me and others to live in areas of the country where we desire, not just because of necessity. You have allowed us to live in areas of extreme heat. You've allowed us to live in areas of extreme cold. You've made it possible for me to have a smartphone, which overall I do think is a good thing. So I appreciate it, I believe. You know, we in the oil and gas industry, when we're asked what we do, and I've seen it on countless occasions, I've seen us kind of mumble and look down at our shoes. And we might say something like, well, I'm involved in the energy industry. And I give you the challenge not to do that. The next time someone says to you or asks you, just what do you do? I want you to look them in the eye and tell them, I make your life better. Because frankly, that is what you do, and I think you need recognition. That's it for the slideshow. I'd be happy to take questions you might have. Oh, come on, just one. Yes, sir.
Appreciate what you had to say and what Scott Montiel had to say yesterday. You know, in light of losing Tim Morrison and Lake Pontchartrain, all that being said, my words to Scott were try to work with a sense of urgency because we are dying on the vine. And I see too many people doing jobs that are out of their scope of expertise to make a living, to make ends meet, and doing whatever they can. So it's just disheartening to see our industry struggle like it has for a long time, and you well know. Just try to focus on doing things with a sense of urgency.
Appreciate that. The sense of urgency, we need to get moving again. And we need to do it the right way. You know, no one can afford another accident. We don't plan to have accidents. And The Lake Pontchartrain is another tragic accident. They are becoming fewer. We'll continue to make them fewer. But each and every one of us in the industry need to do our part, that we do it right and we do it the right way. But I appreciate that. There is truly a sense of urgency to get us back on our feet. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Randall, we see what better things and great things are happening in D.C. which benefit the industry. And that's come with a lot of direction from a new president. Unfortunately, we see the dysfunctional side of things that are going on. And one of the fears is that we've got a couple of years left. What do you see? I mean, I know a crystal ball is very cloudy, but we really need the Republicans to remain in office for at least, through the next election. Otherwise, potentially all this good that is coming could be undone very quickly, and potentially even worse than that if the Democrats were to get back in. What do you see? I mean, how are we only? Is it as bad as what is being portrayed by the fake media?
Okay. Yes and no. I hate giving that answer because that's such a DC answer, right? There is tumult, there is confusion, and from an old-timer establishment, and I'll say Republican, I know you're all shocked at that, but yeah, I'll say Republican, it is disconcerting because I do think we have less than 2 years now to make changes to make it work. So the easy part's done. We need to get Interior working at a sense of urgency to get those regulations revised, get them done and out the door. Things to watch for on the political front, there are a couple of things. Jeff Flake, the senator of Arizona, just yesterday said he's had enough. He's not going to run anymore. That's disconcerting. Now, the chances are Arizona is going to elect another Republican, which usually is good news for our industry. But it is disconcerting that someone that had, again, he was considered one of those that would be in the Senate forever. And he just got contrary and contrast with President Trump, and he just decided it just wasn't worth it. Coming up next month is an election in Virginia for governor. Virginia, as a rule, the last 8 years at least, has turned pretty blue or Democratic. But the last 2 statewide elections in Virginia, the Republican came within 2%. Even the presidential race was closer than anyone expected. The governorship is one we're watching. It's got, on the Democratic side, is Northern, who is as Democratic as they come, and that's fine. That's what he is. On the Republican side is Gillespie, who actually used to work for President Bush. It's a clear choice. I have not seen a poll where Gillespie is ahead, but it's interesting to watch. So just watch that as well. If that goes heavily, if that governorship is not close and it goes heavily Democrat, I think Republicans need to start paying attention to the polls and seeing where they are, and we'll hopefully start moving together in a more unified voice. It's a strange time. I grew up in the era where Republicans didn't speak ill of each other. That no longer applies. It's just, it's new ground for me as well. But I agree. I think we have 2 years to get it done. Now it's 1.5 years. Yes, sir.
You spoke about Astro. How would that affect Louisiana as far as revenue sharing?
Louisiana is set up already for revenue sharing. What it would hopefully do is increase the amount of production that's being done in exploration. So the revenue sharing, you just have more money to share, the federal government to share. Louisiana's revenue sharing was actually set up many years ago through Go Mesa. So what it means is it remains secure, because a couple of times it's been suggested that Louisiana not continue getting revenue sharing, but this helps them help it remain secure. Yes, sir.
Hi, Randall.
Jim.
Again, thanks. Great, wonderful presentation. It was absolutely awesome. The question I would have is, we always have naysayers on both sides of the aisle that are not so friendly to together to help educate them at a much higher level than they currently are, to understand that they too are dependent upon energy.
And I appreciate that. I mean, the question is, what are we doing to help educate everybody how important energy is? Frankly, we in the oil and gas industry has just done a piss poor job at doing that. We have. We know how important it is. That's one of the things where now we're talking about more than just fueling our cars, particularly since that's not an issue right now, since fuel prices are pretty low. We've expanded to the products that petroleum makes, attempting to do that. The approach we've taken at NOIA as well is to say, pay attention to climate change. There are areas in the world that have significant changes than they did a generation ago. Pay attention to that. But it's technology and adaptation is how we should address it. Even with the growth that the United States has had in the last 20 years, our actual emissions of CO2, carbon dioxide, one of the greenhouse gases that you hear the most about, has actually gone down. Pardon? Except Al Gore's. Thank you very much. Exactly. But the reality is those emissions are actually down. As technology continues to improve, as efficiency continues to improve, and we also need to think about, how we do our operations. And you are doing that. There's a way to make it work. I firmly believe you can have it all. You know you can in Louisiana. You know to have a good environment, a clean environment, and have oil and gas development. I think technology is the key, education is the key. And I would take suggestions of how best to reach. The NOIA and the industry as a whole has also does a lot more social media, tweeting, Instagram, things that I don't even pretend to know how to do in order to reach that younger generation that are using these products as well. So we have a long ways to go, though. We're not there. With that, Bill, thank you all. And again, thank you all for what you do.
One last question, Randall. After the previous 8 years, is it fun being in Washington, the job you do now?
Yes. How about that? I do enjoy it. I'll tell you just one other inside D.C. Area code for D.C. is 202. The local, prefix for the Department of the Interior is 208. What we noticed after January 20th is that we were getting calls from 208. We hadn't seen that number pop up for years and years and years. And again, that's just different. And it's not that, we're in cahoots with the administration. It's that there actually just is a genuine effort to find out what we're interested in and how to do it. And frankly, you know how to do it better than the government does. Scott Angel told us that yesterday. So, thank you.
Thank you, Randall, for a very inspiring talk. And after Scott Angel yesterday, I think there's hope for our industry, okay? And I wish you all the luck and whatever we can do to support.